Welcome, everyone, to today's Explainer. We're going to be taking a hard, but honestly fascinating look at a reality we almost never talk about. In popular culture, personal growth is usually packaged as this cheerful glow up, right? Like it's just this beautiful, seamless transition into a better version of you. But the actual truth? True personal growth is not some peaceful sunset. It's a quiet, often deeply isolating departure from absolutely everything familiar. And the reality is, it demands a brutal cost.
So let's dive right into this heavy premise with an incredible insight from the renowned psychologist Carl Jung. He flat out stated that individuation, which is basically the process of becoming who you truly are, is not peaceful. It is psychologically violent. Yikes, right? But think about why. Because your old identity, that version of you that everyone else is so perfectly comfortable with, that version actually has to die before your new identity is finished. It's a messy, visceral transition where you are literally caught between who you were and who you're becoming.
Now, to really grasp why this process is so disruptive, we have to look at our environments. Think of your family, your core group of friends, or even your workplace as what we call psychological theaters. These are spaces where our relationships are actually built on unconscious behavioral agreements rather than genuine, deep understanding. It's like everyone silently agrees to follow a specific script just to keep the group's emotional balance perfectly intact. Think about the assigned roles in your own life for a second. Are you the peacemaker? Maybe the funny one? The reliable one? Well, here's where it gets interesting. Once you play one of these roles long enough, a really disturbing shift happens. People actually stop seeing you as a living, breathing, evolving human being. Instead, they start seeing you as emotional infrastructure. You essentially become a load-bearing wall for their emotional comfort. So the crucial point here is that society absolutely rewards comfort and conformity. If you're the highly agreeable, self-sacrificing person, you're going to get a steady stream of acceptance and praise. But the evolving person, well, they create friction. The very second you start to change or grow or, heaven forbid, establish boundaries, you become psychologically dangerous to the hierarchy that all those other people benefit from. We have all heard this phrase, haven't we? Wow, you've really changed. But let's be real, when someone says this to you during your growth journey, they almost never mean it as a compliment. What they're actually saying is, you no longer behave in ways that benefit my comfort. Setting new boundaries exposes all those hidden expectations. And you quickly realize that being relentlessly kind without having boundaries, it didn't make you a saint. It just taught people exactly how to use you. And this brings us inward to what Carl Jung called the persona. The persona is essentially a mask. It's a highly curated social adaptation that we construct to make sure we're accepted by the tribe. But here is the danger. If you wear this mask long enough just to keep everyone around you calm and happy, eventually, even you forget where the performance ends and your authentic, true self actually begins. This illustrates a pretty dark truth about human dynamics. A lot of the time, people implicitly prefer the exhausted, drained version of you over the evolving, confident version. Why? Simply because exhaustion is predictable. It's way easier to control. When you evolve and you start raising your standards, your newfound unpredictability is a direct threat to the established power structure of that relationship. Basically, your healing disrupts what your suffering kept intact. Now, as your awareness of all this grows, something big shifts in your daily routine. Solitude suddenly stops feeling like an accident or some sort of punishment. It becomes absolutely necessary. You start to see that so much of modern social life, the constant scrolling, the artificial urgency, the noisy crowds, is really just an unconscious escape from stillness. You start craving that silence because silence reveals exactly what all that distraction was so desperately trying to hide. And when you finally sit in that silence, you descend into the much deeper parts of your psyche. This is where you encounter the shadow. Jung described the shadow as this hidden psychological side of ourselves that contains all the unacceptable traits we constantly push down. We suppress these parts of ourselves simply because society taught us, usually from a very young age, that they were quote-unquote bad. We're talking about some heavy stuff here. Traits like aggression, ambition, selfishness, jealousy, dominance, and deep, deep need. But here is the absolute kicker. Ignoring these dark, heavy impulses does not make them magically disappear. No way. It just pushes them underground. And from that dark, unconscious basement, they actually start to control your behavior from right behind the curtain. You see, the shadow cannot be contained forever. It always leaks eventually, and it usually does so through a psychological defense mechanism called projection. This perfectly explains some of the most baffling human behavior. It's why fiercely loyal people will suddenly betray their partners out of nowhere, or why outwardly kind, super self-righteous people can become incredibly cruel the minute they're under pressure. It's their unacknowledged shadow pulling the strings. You've definitely seen this in action. The deeply insecure person is almost always the very first one to call everyone else arrogant. And that highly manipulative coworker or friend, they will constantly preach to you about honesty and transparency. Once you really grasp this concept of projection, human interactions become unsettlingly transparent. You realize people are constantly accusing others of the exact traits they absolutely cannot accept within themselves.
But hey, this explainer isn't just about analyzing everybody else out there. It's about you too. True self-awareness doesn't start with some fuzzy, toxic positivity. It begins with the often humiliating realization of your own hidden motives. We all have to face the hard fact that our constant niceness wasn't always pure, selfless kindness. Actually, scratch that. A lot of times, it was just a deep, unexamined fear of rejection or abandonment. We weren't being good. We were just terrified of disapproval.
When you finally strip away those illusions, you're faced with a really painful realization. You start to see that a ton of your interactions were entirely transactional. They weren't based on genuine, soulful connection at all. They were based on access, convenience, validation, status, or just mere familiarity. Recognizing this is tough, for sure, but it is exactly why psychologically mature people often become so much more reserved and incredibly protective of their energy over time. So this brings us to a massive, life-altering crossroads. Individuation, actually becoming your true self, absolutely requires separation from the collective psychology. You simply cannot have both. Ultimately, you have to make a choice. Does your life belong to your own conscious awareness, or does it belong to the expectations and the comfort of the crowd? When you're standing at that crossroads, making that choice, you are weighing two ultimate fears against each other. On one side, you have social pain, that terrifying fear of rejection and temporary isolation. On the other side, existential pain, the agonizing fear of reaching the very end of your life and realizing you wasted the whole thing pretending to be someone else. Sadly, most people choose the miserable, familiar certainty of social conformity over the unfamiliar, heavy responsibility of true freedom. And because that comfort is just so deeply seductive, people fall right into this exact repeating cycle. Step 1, they move to a brand new environment, or maybe they find a new partner. Step 2, without even realizing it, they recreate the exact same unhealthy hierarchy. And step 3, they fall right back into the same emotional dependency. They will literally recreate their most painful dynamics with brand new faces over and over until conscious awareness finally steps in and interrupts the cycle. Breaking that cycle? Yeah, it hurts. Genuine transformation feels brutal because you aren't just adding some fun new life skills to your toolkit. You're actively dismantling the very psychological structures and defense mechanisms that once protected you from reality. Pain forces you to observe how things actually are. And isolation, that forces you to confront the self you've been hiding from for years. There is a profound realization we absolutely must face here. You cannot grow and stay comfortable because comfort was often built on the very illusions growth came to destroy. Let that sink in for a second. That is the ultimate inescapable cost of true individuation. You have to sacrifice the illusions that made you feel safe in order to earn the reality that actually makes you free. Look, it's a really high price to pay, but before you throw your hands up and decide it's just too difficult, you also have to calculate the cost of never changing. Because avoiding this confrontation means staying psychologically asleep forever. It means your entire life just becomes this mechanical, robotic repetition of unconscious patterns and unhealed wounds. Sure, you'll survive, but you will never truly live. So I want to leave you with this single, totally provocative question to chew on. It's time to stop asking, who likes me, and start asking yourself, who am I becoming around these people? Are the environments you place yourself in actually pulling you toward your authentic self? Or are you quietly sacrificing who you are just to preserve a false sense of belonging? Think deeply about that. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.